Good afternoon, I'm Danielle from Amnesty International. Okay, raise your hand if you've heard of Amnesty International before. And it's okay if you don't raise your hand. Most people think of Amnesty as, the human rights organization that works on the death penalty, torture, sexual reproductive rights, refugees, etc. We are the world's largest human rights grassroots organization. We've been around almost 60 years. We're in 80 countries, and in addition to doing all those things I mentioned, we've also in the last year really been focused right here in San Francisco and Silicon Valley, because we've been examining the questions of discrimination and ethical use of technology and really exploring the intersection of technology and human rights. And while Laura was up there, I was crossing out a few things in my deck because you beautifully covered algorithmic bias, so you'll get a shorter solo talk. So. Because we've been examining those things around ethical and discrimination use of tech, that's why we launched the Silicon Valley Initiative last year. It's new, and I was chosen to lead it. So I am part of a 15-person tech and human rights team that's spread across San Francisco, London, Berlin, Nairobi, Dakar, Tunis, with more posts to come in the global south. This is us in May at our team retreat. When we're not pretending to be a rock band posing for an album cover, we explore artificial intelligence and machine learning, specifically in the context of how to protect for non-discrimination and equality in machine learning systems. We explore online abuse against women and minority groups. We look at autonomous weapon systems, drones, digital forensics to track attacks, digital attacks on civil society. We look at mass surveillance, censorship, cybersecurity, blockchain, and the legal accountability in the use and trade of surveillance technologies. So in a single sentence, we're trying to figure out how to mitigate and protect against some of the human rights risks of these emerging technologies, and we want to figure out how to maximize the benefit of some of these technologies to help the human rights movement and help protect human rights defenders. We're also looking at how your data is being used. So everybody has a phone, everybody's, moving a lot of data around. We want to make sure that it won't be used against you. So we explore threats to people's rights due to big tech and big data caused by poor practices, misuse, or lack of adequate regulation. What we want to do is ensure that the data around people's personal lives are not being used in a way that can lead to discrimination against religious or ethnic minorities or to repress peaceful protest. And we want to prevent technologies like invasive spyware tools or facial recognition software from being used to target human rights defenders or violate human rights. And we want to make sure that technologies that do protect freedom of expression and privacy, like strong encryption, are protected by law. So in the past, Amnesty has taken a very adversarial approach to corporations in the tech sector, whether it's by taking aim at Microsoft, going after them to really get strong end-to-end encryption in Skype, or going after Apple to make sure that the cobalt in the batteries of your iPhone don't come from the Democratic Republic of the Congo, where children as young as 7 are part of the supply chain and working in these mines in terrible conditions. But the Silicon Valley Initiative, which I'm leading, is sort of part of a shift. We're going to keep on campaigning and advocating against corporates when there's cause for concern, but at the same time, we want to evolve the way we engage with the tech sector to protect human rights in artificial intelligence. And so that's what the Toronto Declaration is about, and that's what I'm going to spend the next couple minutes talking about. So as you heard from Laura in that terrific presentation, we really need to be watching out for ethics and artificial intelligence to protect for human rights in artificial intelligence, So you heard how algorithms can be used to determine bail amounts, prison sentences, whether you're accepted for a bank home loan or whether a refugee is accepted to resettle in a certain country. And while all machine learning algorithms contain some statistical bias, which produce incorrect decisions some of the time, as Laura mentioned, if the historical data is incomplete or not representative of a really diverse or specified population, the biases scale quickly. So to combat this, Amnesty and Access Now launched the Toronto Declaration. And what it does is it outlines how governments and companies can protect the right to equality and prevent discrimination when developing and using machine learning systems based on existing international human rights law that's already been approved. And I'm going to tell you how we built this together with the tech sector. So again, instead of taking an adversarial approach, we wanted to work side by side with the tech sector, mostly because so when the declaration was done, it was something that they would endorse and implement. And so in February, I organized a half-day workshop here in San Francisco with 25 machine learning and AI experts from Facebook and Google and IBM, Microsoft, and lots of other terrific civil society and academia. And we spent a half day working on an early draft of the declaration. That process continued for months. And then the day before we launched the declaration in May, we had another day-long drafting session with 30 folks from tech and civil society and academia. Microsoft, Facebook, et cetera, were there. And then we launched the declaration. So the declaration has gained widespread support. Everyone you can see on here has endorsed it, which is terrific. We are in talks with Apple and Facebook and Google and Microsoft and Salesforce to hopefully have them endorse it and want to start implementing it. And we did hear from Google that when they were creating their ethical artificial intelligence guidelines, the declaration was a really key resource for them, which is great. From a government impact perspective, in the United States, in Canada, in France, and parts of the EU, terrific support and citing the declaration as basis of pieces of legislation. So what comes next? We want to keep the dialogue going with the tech sector, come up with more examples to make people see the adverse effects of artificial intelligence and machine learning, have more dialogues like this. And we are talking to folks at Apple and Google and Facebook about perhaps doing like a closed door workshop with engineers and the product folks to really kind of start to bridge the gap and come up with a shared understanding around human rights in terms of normative principles and technical practices. So what does this mean to all of you guys? We can't do this alone. We wouldn't dare think that we could do this alone. We really need everyone in the room to be a part of it. So if you're interested in preventing discrimination in artificial intelligence, please seek me out. If you're interested in ending gun violence in the United States, that's another really big topic of us, please seek me out. My other big focus of the Silicon Valley Initiative is to explore how can social media and digital technology help us bring more diversity into the human rights movement? How can we get more people of color involved? Frankly, most of Amnesty supporters in the United States are in their 50s and 60s and they're white. And that is not very representative of people in need. So we need as many people as we can to help us figure out how tech can make it more a human rights movement that reflects everybody. So I'll wrap it up there. Thank you so much, and you can look for me later.
Thank you so much.